Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognise the continuing connection to lands, water and communities. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past and present. Now on to our housekeeping. Welcome all, my name is Sky and I am with the Customer and Stakeholder Engagement team. Also joining us today is Bill, who is our Technical Engagement Officer, and he'll be taking you through the rest of the presentation. At the end of the webinar, you'll get a survey. It only takes a couple of minutes and it really helps us plan events for you that are relevant to your situation. If you're using a mobile device and you can't hear the sound, check your device settings. Most of you shouldn't have any issues, but if you can't hear anything, try adjusting the media volume on your device. Send through any questions via the chat box, as you can see on the screen. Keep in mind, the information given during this presentation is of general and educative nature only and does not amount to legal, financial or specialist advice and should not be relied upon for the purpose of making business or any other decisions. If we don't get to your question, we'll send your questions through to the appropriate business unit for a response. You'll find all the information provided in this webinar and more in the PDF handouts, which you can access from your dashboard, as you can see in the image on the screen. Now, onto the topics for this session. We'll cover a range of topics, as you can see on the slide, including an overview of the QBCC, some tips on choosing your contractor, the importance of contracts, building approvals and inspections, building disputes, your obligations if you want to be an owner builder, the home warranty insurance scheme, and property maintenance. Now for a quick overview of the QBCC. In Queensland, the QBCC is the statutory government body that regulates the building industry. Regulation of Queensland building industry started in 1970, and different versions of the organisation have existed for the last 50 years. The Builders Registration Board of Queensland was first. Then we had the Queensland Building Services Authority in 1992. And from 2013, the Queensland Building and Construction Commission was born. QBCC also provides other services and functions, including consumer and contractor advice, licensing, the Queensland Home Warranty Insurance Scheme, resolution services, contract templates, and compliance and enforcement functions. One of the first steps in the building process is choosing the right contractor for your project. It is a very important decision. So let's go over 5 key steps to remember. Step number 1, create a list of local contractors licensed to do the job. In Queensland, individuals and companies generally need to hold a QBCC license to contract for work over 3,300. You can find contractors through various sources, including the free QBCC Find a Local Contractor search, personal recommendations from friends, neighbours, etc., industry organisations like Master Builders Queensland or the Housing Industry Association, and ads in the local media, online trade directories, etc. Remember, contractors are required by law to make sure ads include their name and their license number. Step 2, check that the potential contractor has the right license. Their license card will show you that they've met their licensing requirements, including technical qualifications, experience, and their financial capacity. Ask to see the license and note the type of license. For example, if it's a contractor, a nominee supervisor, etc. And just double check their name and the expiry date on the card. Make sure the person that you are dealing with has the same name on their card as their driver's license. And very importantly, make a note of their license class. And this will determine the scope of work that they're licensed to work within. You can also double check their details on the QBCC licensee search function on our website. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Step 3, remember to get at least 3 quotes. The cheapest quote is not always the best, and always try to get a fixed price for the work. When it comes to getting quotes, make sure you give clear requirements to your contractor so they understand exactly what you want. Carefully consider and compare the quotes, and make sure you read the conditions, specifications, inclusions, and exclusions in the quote to confirm it includes the full scope of work and stacks up against the other quotes. If you have any concerns, definitely seek legal advice. Step 4, ask your contractor for details of their past work. If possible, inspect previous work and even ask previous clients questions like, did the contractor provide documentation clearly outlining the work to be done? Did they provide good customer service? For example, were they polite, responsive, and on time for appointments? Did they stick to the agreed cost and timing? And did they properly document all variations and seek approval prior to commencing the work? Now stick around as we will talk about that later on the presentation. Now remember, there's no such thing as a silly question. Communication, number 5. You and your contractor might be spending a lot of time working together, so it's quite important to find someone that you're compatible with. Communication is a key factor, and maintaining open communication can come in various forms, including arranging appointments to inspect your project at regular intervals, advising your contractor in writing if problems occur, and asking for a written response where possible. Making sure any variations to the contract are agreed to in writing prior to the work beginning, and sticking to the payment schedule outlined in your contract. Once you've gone through these steps and found your contractor, the next step is to get a contract in place. Now to walk you through the rest of our presentation is Bill, our Technical Engagement Officer. Take it away, Bill.
Thanks, Sky. So we'll move straight into contracts. So the contract is one of, if not the most important document with any building project. The complete contract will not only include the written contract, but also includes any plans, specifications, and special conditions. This will also spell out things such as start and completion dates, building milestones, progress payments, and how to deal with project issues that may arise. If you're unsure of what you are signing, we recommend that legal advice should be sought, and in the event of any disagreement, you should always refer back to the conditions in the contract. You will note from the slide on your screen, contracts are required for domestic building work with a value greater than $3,300, and they must comply with the Schedule 1B of the QBCC Act. The contract will also provide other practical information regarding your project. And the QBCC offers a domestic building contracts guide and contract templates for consumers and contractors to use, which are all free and available on the QBCC website. So we'll talk about some of the important components of the contract. All domestic building contracts for work over $3,300 must include an advice of a cooling off period. Usually the cooling off period is within 5 business days after your contractor provides you a copy of the entire signed contract, including all the contract documents and the consumer building guide. During the cooling off period, you will have an option to withdraw from the contract. You must give a signed notice of intention to withdraw to the contractor under the cooling off provisions, again in section 35 of Schedule 1B. If you do decide to withdraw from the contract, just be aware that there may be some costs that you need to pay, and these costs will typically reflect any out-of-pocket expenses incurred by the contractor. As we mentioned, your contractor must give you a consumer building guide before you sign a contract for any domestic building project, and importantly here, where the price or the work is priced at $20,000 or more. And sometimes that's referred to as a level 2 contract. This is a consumer information document for homeowners about key building issues and obviously how to best avoid disputes and the common pitfalls. The Consumer Building Guide is an easy to read document that has information for you as the homeowner about topics such as payments, variations, building inspections, handover, and what to do if a problem arises. Any delay in supplying the guide will extend the cooling off period until such time it is handed over. So it is part of the contract documents. And if you'd like to check out the Consumer Building Guide, you can find a copy of that on the QBCC website. I guess now we'll go through some of the items within the contract. So deposits. There are laws that outline how much you should pay for a deposit and your progress payments. And the maximum payment allowed before work starts on site is 10% where the total contract price is less than $20,000, 5% where the price is $20,000 or more, or 20% for a contract of any price where the value of work to be performed off-site is more than 50% of the contract price. A typical example of this would be a kitchen. Even though a contract is not required for domestic building work that is less than $3,300, we always recommend that you have some form of written agreement, and the maximum deposit should be no more than 20% of the total contract price. We'll move on to progress payments. So before signing a building contract, it is vital as you as the owner discuss with your contractor and you fully understand what progress payments the contractor proposes for your project. It is recommended that the payment stages be linked to clearly defined construction stages, but if instead of construction stages, the contract provides for payment at regular intervals, the builder's payment claims must be supported by detailed evidence of the amount and the value of the work performed during the period covered by the claim. Uncertainty about when progress payments are due or the amount payable are very common causes of disputes. Homeowners should also be careful only to pay the amount required under the contract for the progress payment, or don't make the payment before it's due under the contract, as this may reduce the protection available to you under the Queensland Home Warranty Scheme, which is administered by the QBCC. All right, we'll just talk about commencement notices. So for all contracts priced at $20,000 or more, again, we mentioned that level 2 contract, contractors are now required to give owners a commencement notice within 10 business days of the contracted work commencing on site. Now, importantly here, the notice must state the date of work started on site, and there must be a date for practical completion. So this can't be open-ended. There must be dates inserted in the contract. All right, and as we mentioned before, we did mention variations. So a variation is any change to the materials used or the scope of work performed under a contract. And I guess we all know those as variations. Failure to accurately record and approve variations is one of the most common causes of building disputes that we see. Now, the contractor must present the variation to you in writing, and you need to agree to it in writing before the contractor commences the variation work. Now, there's a couple of things to remember here. The contractor cannot require payment before the work is started, right? And any variation in the contract to increase or decrease the value of work, it may affect the existing insurance. So check with your contractor if this affects you, or give us a call. Now, just a warning here, and I guess this has come from our home warranty team. Homeowners should be careful never to pay more than the amount required under the contract for a progress payment, or make the payment before it's due under the contract, as this may reduce the protection available to them or to you under the Queensland Home Warranty Scheme, which is administered by the QBCC. So importantly, make sure your payments align with the progress on site and you're not paying money in advance. Some important information right there. All right, we'll talk a little bit about cost plus contracts here. So we might know these as the old pay-as-you-go arrangement, and there's no certainty as what the final cost of the work's going to be. You should be very careful if you're going to use a cost plus contract. From what we see, they frequently lead to cost overruns, and none of this may have been included in your budget. Reports over the years suggest that the final costs under cost plus contracts to the Commission are considerably more than what owners anticipated, and sometimes in the vicinity of 50 to 100% greater than their expectation. So you need to be careful if you're going to use a cost plus contract. We'll talk a little bit about delays or project delays here. So calculating the finish date of your project, the contractor by law must make reasonable allowance for delays like rainy days and public holidays, and if it is likely these delays could affect the project completion. Extension of time claims will not be valid if the cause of the delay was the important words here, was reasonably foreseeable or within the reasonable control of the contractor. It's well documented in the last few years, there's been material delays and labour shortages. So that's the sort of thing that should be reasonably foreseeable to most builders. The domestic building legislation no longer requires contractors to state in their contracts the number of days they have allowed for likely delays. However, some contracts, and including those produced by the Commission, still require contractors to state the number of days they have allowed for each likely delay. And we do have a handy checklist that is available in the QBCC Homeowners Guide to Building and Renovating, and I do believe you'll be able to find that as a handout attached to this webinar. So just another note here, so just because of the uncertainty for the final contract price when using cost-plus contracts, assistance for non-completion under the Queensland Home Warranty Scheme is generally not available to you as a homeowner when cost-plus contracts are used. So be aware that this can have some effect on the home warranty insurance. And if you're not quite sure what non-completion is, it's where a builder fails to complete the work and another contractor needs to be engaged to complete the project. So again, important information there. All right, we'll move on to a little bit now about owner building. Some of you out there might be considering this. So if you are planning to do some of the building and renovating work yourself on your property and you want to, the chances are that you are going to need an owner builder permit. QBCC issue a permit for work over $11,000, which obviously allows you to do the work and take on the role of the head contractor on a project. As such, you will be responsible for engaging and coordinating your contractors, as well as for all of the scheduling of the work and material deliveries. Some of the work you can do, obviously you can build a new home, you can renovate an existing home, building a garage, a carport, or swimming pool and the like, pergolas, entertainment areas, so you could use your imagination there. There are some restrictions and work that you cannot do. So you cannot build or renovate multiple dwellings like duplexes or unit blocks, and commercial or industrial buildings like shops, sheds, and some farm buildings. So be aware there are restrictions there. So if you're planning on to do multiple properties over years, you won't be able to do that as an owner builder. And there's another exemption here that unless you hold the appropriate license, you can't do what's known as occupational work. And these are things such as plumbing, drainage, gas fitting, termite management, and electrical work. So as you can see, most of those are connected to one of the service utilities to your house, and the infrastructure generally belongs to the company or the utility provider. There is a note here, you are permitted to do some work up to the value of $1,100 without the appropriate occupational license. This is for fire protection work and mechanical services. There is an $1,100 limit there, but I would recommend that you leave this to the professionals. There are some disadvantages, I guess, working under an owner builder permit. As we mentioned, there's a restriction on the number of projects you can do. We can only issue you one permit every 6 years. You have limited or basically no access to the home warranty scheme, which protects owners against incomplete or defective work. You are responsible for the supervision and all the activities on site. And if you do plan on selling the property and you want to sell where you have finished an owner builder project in the last 6 years, you must tell prospective buyers about the work. The law says that before the purchaser signs the contract of sale, you must provide them with a notice which contains some important information, such as the details of the building work performed, the name of the person on the owner builder permit or who performed the work, a statement confirming the work was performed under an owner builder permit, and words to the effect of warning, the building work to which this notice relates is not covered by insurance under the Queensland Building and Construction Commission Act 1991. Now, there's some other obligations as well. You must give the prospective buyer 2 copies of this notice. They must sign 1 copy and return it to you as the vendor on or before signing the contract to sale. Now, if you don't provide this notice to the prospective buyer, the law assumes you have given a warranty that the building work was properly carried out, and you may be liable for any building faults in the future. So we suggest that you get some legal advice if you are planning to sell an owner-built home. Now, just some important information here. Remember, the owner-builder administrative advice must remain on the title for 7 years. So this goes on to the property title. And to remove this notification, please contact Titles Queensland for more information. So just some important information there about owner building and if you are going to sell within that period of time. All right, we'll move along here. We'll move on to some approvals and inspections. So very important part of the building process. As you'd be aware, there are lots of checks and balances involved in building work. So building approvals are one of these checks and balances which are assessed against a strict set of rules, generally including the National Construction Code, building standards, product manufacturers' instructions, and the like, to make sure that your building and renovation project complies with the rules. Now, the person involved with this is generally, or approvals for your building work must be obtained from a licensed building certifier. Certifiers are highly qualified building industry professionals whose responsibility it is to check the house or your renovations that they comply with the right building standards. Inspections obviously must be carried out by the certifier or someone that's authorised by them to do the inspection. And just be aware that even though certifiers inspect building work on your project, it's not their job to supervise the work or provide quality control. And just be aware they can't really intervene to make sure that your builder complies with the contract. So their role is to check the house or renovations meet the right building standards and comply with the building approval. If you're talking about supervision and quality control, this is the role of your building contractor to ensure that the building work is in the supervision and quality control, it's adequately supervised. I mean, they basically have the primary role or responsibility for ensuring that the project is constructed to an acceptable standard in accordance with, obviously, the approvals, the relevant laws and the legal requirements, and all your contract documents, including your plans and specifications. And just a note to remember there that all building site certifiers, they must be licensed with the QBCC. And if there is any doubt, you can check their license details on our website. All right, we'll talk a little bit about disputes here. So hopefully, excuse me for a minute, everyone there doesn't end up in a dispute. So best way to avoid a dispute or before involving the QBCC, there are some actions you should independently take that will help you either resolve the disagreement or prepare for lodging a complaint. So when the contractor work is finished, the building contractor and owner or their authorised representative, so you may have someone representing you, should inspect the work. And if the owner believes there are any minor defects or omissions, compile a defects document. Probably this is generally referred to as a handover meeting or a walk around or something similar to those effect, but you both meet on site or your representative meets on site and you walk around the project. So the document must list all the minor defects and minor omissions in the work that both the owner and the contractor agree exist. State when the building contract is to remedy the minor defects and minor omissions mentioned in the above list. List any minor defects and omissions in the work that the owner believes exist but the contractor does not agree with, and be signed by the contractor and the owner and or the owner's authorised representative. Importantly there, they mentioned minor defects and omissions. A building can be handed over with those, but if there's any major defects, refer back to your contractor or get some advice. Importantly, give your contractor reasonable access to the site to review and address your concerns, so allow them back. And very importantly, do not engage another contractor or attempt to fix any of the work or the potential defective work yourself, as this can affect the QBCC's ability to provide you any assistance in the future. Obviously, if talking is not successful in the first instance, write or email your contractor with a detailed list of every item you believe is defective or incomplete. It's okay to write these if you don't know all the technical terms, as long as you can identify where it is and what you think it is, that should be enough. Make sure that you provide a reasonable time frame, 14 days to respond or investigate or address the item. So don't come directly to the QBCC, and make sure you allow your contractor some time. And please remember, if you're unsure, seek some legal advice should you need guidance handling your dispute with your contractor, or obviously get in contact with the QBCC. All right, we'll move along a bit further. A little bit more about defective building work complaints. So when you lodge a defective complaint, basically we review the complaint and assess whether you qualify for our dispute resolution services. How we help depends on the state of your contract and your eligibility to receive help. What we mean by there is sometimes we get complaints while the build is in progress, sometimes it's after it's finished. And there are different processes for both those complaints. If your project is complete and you have concerns about the work, it could be anything structural integrity or something like that, you may be able to utilise our defective work complaints process. To be considered a defect, obviously the complaint item needs to fall short of the building rules and standards, And obviously mentioned, National Construction Code, Australian standards, and QBCC board policy. So a number of things there. Obviously, depending on the severity of the defect, and there are different timeframes in which to lodge a complaint with the QBCC. And you can read more about that in the Homeowner's Guide to Building and Renovating, which we have a booklet for that. And as I mentioned, as a homeowner, you aren't expected to know what all the building codes and technical terms are, but we do have a handy standards and tolerance guide, which is generally available on our website. You can have a look at that, and that may provide you with a good reference to work out whether you may potentially have some defective work or not. Once the complaint form has been received, one of our assessment officers will assess your submission and contact you and the contractor to discuss the complaint and obtain further information or documents if they're required. At all times, we always try and facilitate an outcome. So our officers will attempt to facilitate an outcome in that initial call. But if this is unsuccessful and there is alleged defective building work, then this can be allocated to a QBCC building inspector, and a site inspection can be scheduled at a later date. Be aware that, I guess, following a site inspection, if we do find defective work, we may issue direction to the principal contractor and or to any of the relevant subcontractors to rectify the defective work. So there is a process there. And like I said, if we find defective work, then we have the power to issue directions to rectify to have that work corrected. All right, some of our complaints that we receive, some of you may have heard of, I guess, of Queensland Civil Administrative Tribunal. It's a bit of a mouthful, but sometimes it's known as QCAT. So some of the complaints we receive, they may be more contractual. For example, a wrong colour element or a tile or something's been used to what was agreed, or there could be a disagreement about the cost of a variation. So if the work is incorrect, but it's still built to code, so it's not actually defective, the QBCC is limited in the direct assistance that we can provide, and we would refer to this as a contractual dispute. The Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal, or QCAT, does require that all people with a building dispute, that you come to the QBCC first before they can initiate a case. Once you come to us, we can issue a letter of evidence that you've been through the QBCC process, and then simply complete the complaint form with the details of your dispute. Again, the QBCC officer will contact both parties and again attempt to facilitate an outcome. And obviously, if this is unsuccessful, we will provide both parties with a letter. So you can see there are all times we do try and facilitate an agreement very early on in the process. But so I guess regarding your obligations to rectify defects and timeframes, so this is some important information here. So most of your domestic building contracts commonly used in Queensland include a defects liability period, which is set out in the general conditions of the contract, which is usually somewhere towards the end of the document. The defects liability period is the period which the contractor is contractually obligated to rectify defects in the contracted building work, which the owner has identified and referred to the contract in writing. The defects liability period is commonly 12 months from the date of practical completion. So this refers to the defects liability that's in the contract. So the QBCC recommends that owners carefully check the contracted work and notify the contractor in writing of any defects they identify well before the expiry of the defects liability period. Now, an owner seeking QBCC's assistance with the issuing of a direction to a building contractor to rectify defective or incomplete building work or to remedy consequential damage, you must lodge a complaint form with the QBCC as soon as possible, but within 12 months after the owner becomes aware that the building work is not defective or incomplete. So a couple of different things there. We're talking about the contract, letting the contractor know, and then we're talking about, okay, if it hasn't been fixed, you're going to lodge the work, and you've only got 12 months to do that. So you can't sit on your heels there and wait. All right, so some important information there, like I said, about the warranty scheme. So, and the differentiation there between the warranty scheme and the obligations under your contract. But we'll move on. So now we'll talk a little bit about the warranty scheme. So most residential building work over $3,300 needs to have the QBCC warranty insurance. This is where your contractor pays a premium to the QBCC to insure the construction. The amount is included as part of your contract. It is paid before the work begins. The premium must be paid within 10 business days of the contract date or before the work starts, whichever happens first. So this requirement is set out in the QBCC Act, and there are penalties for the failure to do so. So let's go over the policy and when this help and how. So the home warranty insurance is different to our other insurance policies like contents or occupational insurance. So the policy can help when the contractor can't complete the work, the contractor fails to fix defective work, or if the builder suffers from subsidence or settlement. And while most builds will be seen to completion, in some cases the contractor is unable to complete the project, and this could be for a number of reasons. They could have a suspension or cancellation of their license. They could go into bankruptcy or be placed into administration or liquidation. And unfortunately, sometimes there can be death or injury. Another area where the insurance could help is in cases of subsidence. So what is subsidence? Subsidence is generally movement in the foundations that adversely affects the structural adequacy of the house. So basically how this is measured, if the movement varies from one part of a building to another, and it generally presents itself where cracks may occur. If the movement is outside of the tolerances specified in the Australian Building Code standards, and if it's not caused by defective work or lack of maintenance, so importantly there are two things there, defective work by the contractor and lack of maintenance by the owner. So the QBCC will engage an engineer to investigate this further. If subsidence is identified, and even if the contractor isn't at fault, the QBCC home warranty insurance could help. So if it's not the fault of the contractor, we can still provide assistance there with with subsidence, but there's strict rules around it. All right, now we'll move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the things that can happen to your home. So here in Queensland, I mean, obviously we live in an ever-changing environment, and as we know, disaster can strike at any time. So it's never too early to be prepared for storms, floods, cyclones, and bushfires. If you are a property owner, you are responsible for maintaining your building and things such as the plumbing and drainage systems of your home. Regular maintenance helps to keep your home in good order and all the systems functioning as they should. We will have a short video on this subject, but we'll go after the next couple of slides. So if you are affected by a natural disaster and you do need to repair or rebuild your home, make sure that you use appropriate licensed contractors for the work. And we do have some tools available on our website. Once again, very simply, make sure that you use a licensed contractor. And like I said, we have tools on our website to help you with this. And one of those tools is our online registers, where you can search and find a licensed contractor in your local area. It's very handy. So it can be used at any time, and it's not just after a natural disaster. So we do have registers for things such as building contractors, plumbers, and building certifiers. So if you get onto that register and look in your local area, then you should be able to find who you may need as licensed contractors to do the work. Now, the QBCC also assists Queensland communities recovering from natural disasters by providing technical and general advice on a wide range of rebuilding issues. On our website, we have fact sheets and publications, specially designed building contracts for use after a natural disaster. And obviously we mentioned the dedicated rebuild registers to help you find local contractors after a major natural disaster and the like. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a short video to play, and we will now play that short video on property maintenance, and we'll see you soon.
As a property owner, you are responsible for maintaining building, plumbing, and drainage systems associated with your home. Here are some helpful tips. Clear any leaves and debris out of eaves and gutters to ensure proper drainage of roof water during severe weather events. This is particularly important if you are living in a leafy suburb. Check your deck. Inspect nuts, bolts, screws, and nails for signs of deterioration. Make sure fixings are free from rust, bending, or fractures. Look at post brackets to see if they are bending or stressed. You should also apply caution when it comes to the weight of the load you place on your deck, for example, a barbecue, fridge, and other furniture. Make sure you have a suitable termite management system. Learn how to check for evidence of termites yourself. If you have a retaining wall, keep the area well drained. Reduce any vegetation next to the walls because this may affect the moisture content of nearby soil. When it comes to your hot water system, make sure you get it serviced by an appropriately licensed plumber and check the owner's manual so you know how often to do so. You should also release the temperature pressure relief valve at regular intervals to maintain proper functioning of the valve and to remove metal ions that may build up in the water close to the valve. Again, check the owner's manual before releasing the valve to ensure you are doing this safely. Check out the QBCC Home and Property Owners blog for more information on any of these topics. You can also find the QBCC on social media.
Right, welcome back everybody. Some really good information there on homeowner maintenance. All right, well that brings us to the end of our presentation, and if you have any questions about any topics discussed or the building process in general, please submit them via the QBCC website or call one of our friendly contact centre staff for more assistance. So we wish you all the best with your building project, and on behalf of the QBCC team, we thank you for your attendance.